Let them in, Aaron. Let them in. I say, yeah, 75. That's a good number to begin at. Okay. Okay. What a treat to be here. Um, Now, guys, you know it's my personal view that what happens on the webinar stays on the webinar, but Aaron refuses that one and says we have to record this and put it on the YouTube's channel. So bear that in mind. The recording is about to start if it hasn't already. Thank you very much, Aaron. Aaron is also absolutely determined that there's going to be slides and stuff here. And I keep saying, no, no, no. This is a end of year Q&A for people to ask whatever they want about Street Manager. I don't have a huge rake of prepared material. I do have one surprise up my sleeve, which we can get onto in a bit. But really, guys, get your questions into the Q&A, I would say, rather than the chat. Hopefully, you can see the Q&A, and we can talk about the work of the last few months on Street Manager. We can talk about the upcoming next few months on Street Manager. We can talk about anything you like, really, in the world of Street Manager. And this webinar will be what you guys make of it. We won't last the full hour if there's no questions from yourselves. So if I think about the upcoming Street Manager roadmap, we're going to talk about the redesign that we've got on the go. So that's a funny one, guys. Not incredibly exciting for you guys, I have to admit, possibly. But they changed on government websites recently, and I don't know if you've renewed your driving license or paid a government toll or something on a government website, but they've changed the crown, now that there's the king and all that kind of stuff. So they asked us to do the same thing, and it wasn't easy for us to do because we're still on the old design system. Boring stuff behind the scenes, this, but like they changed the design system after we launched Street Manager. So we have to put a fair bit of effort into switching over the design system. But one day, not a million miles away, in the first quarter of 2026, maybe I would say, you're going to log into Street Manager UI one day, if you do that as part of your job, and it'll all look a bit different. It will be more blue than black, and it will just have a slightly different, hopefully nicer feel to it. One of the byproducts is that makes it easier for us to make changes to the site in the future. It's kind of future-proof in Street Manager. So it was something we were going to need to do at some point, and we have now started to put that in place. So that's one of the things that's on our upcoming roadmap. Another thing to mention is the lane rental functionality. You can feel free to ask questions about that, but we are literally building that at the moment. We're starting with the application side of it. We've really tried to focus on the feedback we got from promoters in that area. We would like to make it as clear as possible where the lane rental is on a USRN. We've been working with GeoPlace to potentially see if the new spec can sort of improve how that's handled, or the information that is given to us from lane rental schemes, because it's not always entirely, if you've only got a start and end coordinate for where the lane rental is, if you start drawing straight lines, that doesn't always give you the best results. If you think about bends in the road or dual carriageways or weird things like that. You can get some weird results when you do that. So ideally, what we'd like, I think, what everyone would surely like, is a beautiful polygon when you're trying to apply for a job on a lane rental street, so you can see precisely where it is. And I think that's got to be the way we want to end up, but we're not quite there yet. The other interesting thing that came out of the feedback was the waiver process. And we're sort of starting to do something in that area, and I think we'll need to iterate on it in the future. But it was a sort of tricky question for us of, there's not one process. So does street manager try and impose one process of waivers on the industry, or do we get feedback and try and improve it in conjunction with the industry? And I think that's more what we've decided. But lane rental is going to be the work of the next probably 6 or 7 months, I would say, guys. It's going to go into the summer when we get to do the highway authority side of it as well. That will follow, sort of April into the spring, summer. Let's see how it's going in the Q&A and the chat. What have we got? Oh, there's a good question. Okay, going to vote for that myself. What have we got in the chat? Okay, right. At this juncture, I'm going to introduce to you a special guest star. His name is Michael Miss Campbell. He is the lead architect for the Street Manager project, would you believe? An actual expert who knows what he's talking about, not just some chancer like me. We're honoured to have him with us. And the topic we're going to talk about now is the archiving on Street Manager. Long-time viewers might remember we said we were going to archive Street Manager permits after 7 years. And would you believe it's already been over 5 years? So the question for Michael is, what happens after 7 years, Michael? Are we just going to start deleting stuff? And if we are we going to give these good people any notice? What's going on?
No. So the good news is, after 7 years, we will not be deleting everything. So we will not. We will be putting it safely into a data platform. Is what we plan to do with the data. So ultimately, what we want to do is retain it. So we do for the 21 years and 9 months that it is required for. So it is. So what we are proposing to build from January to March is ultimately to start this process. So ultimately to start to synchronize our data from our current database across into this data platform. And with that, then we will be able to safely remove the data from our main database. So we will, and then ultimately be able to retain it for the full 21 years and 9 months, and ultimately give you the ability in the future to be able to retrieve that data back as is needed. So we do. So that's the good news. I can go in from a technical perspective, Paul, if you so wish, but that's what we plan to do. So it is.
Thank you very much, Michael. I was having a great old time reading the questions that are coming in. Did you get around to talking about timescales?
So timescales is on this. So ultimately, we plan to start the piece of work in January. So we do, and what we plan to do is ultimately just to get the data synchronization process flowing. So we do. Then from March, so going into our phase 13, what we plan to do is then to look at how we integrate it into Street Manager. So that work is still very much in its infancy. But what we hope to do is ultimately have it, and hope and what our desire is to make it as seamless as possible for our users. So ultimately, we want to make it that you can retrieve the archive data as easily as you can access the main, as easy as you can access permits in the existing Street Manager application. But we want to conduct obviously some thorough user research around that, and ultimately really get out and speak to the users and understand what it is that you need and what your requirements are from it. But the key thing I suppose I want to convey is we want to archive all of the data. So we do, to ultimately ensure that we can service any request which comes in the future. So we do.
So dumb it down for me, because I'm still getting my head around it. So
yes.
all of the data gets archived, and as I understand it, the new stuff that comes in gets archived on a nightly basis.
Indeed. So to really simplify it down, what we are going to so right now we have a database for the Street Manager application. Then we're also going to build this data platform. So in the data platform, imagine just a very large bucket where we can just keep putting data into it. So we can. What will happen in January to March is we will do a full data migration of everything in the database or up to that point in time that day. And then what we'll do is any future changes that happen, we will just automatically send across into the data platform. So we will. So the idea of it is that our data platform remains perfectly in sync with our database. And then whenever data goes beyond the 7-year mark, so it is and ultimately should be deleted from our main database, we can delete it safely, but we still retain it in the data platform. So we do.
I think it's going to be a big hit, Michael. Are you saying to me that do I have a separate login for this, or is this with one login?
So with that, I think I'd like to go through a bit of I'd like to conduct user research around it and ultimately understand what people need from it. I think for me, I would like it that ultimately you do not require a separate login. Ultimately, you log into the Street Manager service, and you can then go and access archived records, or you can access records as you do now. Is my vision of how I want it to work. So it is.
Lovely stuff, Michael. This is going to be a big issue as we go forward, I'm sure. So take this as a bit of an early heads up, guys. Michael, if you want to stay on the line on off camera there for a minute, and if any questions come in about it, we can throw back to you. A real treat to have Michael with us, guys. If you have any questions of a technical nature, do feel free to chuck them in. Right, okay. Let's go into the chat, or the Q&A rather, should I say. I'm having a shocker here. I don't know why I've changed. Right, okay. Now, in the audience, I have a couple of ringers who are going to support me. Kristen, could you do me the kindness of posting the relevant video to answer Richard's question? And if you can do that, then we can come back to it and see it in a minute. Right, okay. Colin asks, where are we with non-compliance escalation management functionality? Do you ever have an answer in your head, and then when you read the question out loud, you realise that you'd have been answering the wrong question? So we have work in the backlog around non-compliance improvements, and we want to get onto them. I think it's right in the mix for the next phase. But I still don't quite know if those things we've got in the backlog really addresses the escalation management functionality. And then if you also look at what Becky's saying in the chat, guys, she's got a question around defect escalations at each cycle, a breakdown of escalation stages, which I think is really important. And I had a question come in to the Street Manager. The tickets. A ticket was raised the other day asking about finances for inspections, and I was saying, well, that's tricky these days, isn't it? Now there's no longer a kind of one-to-one relationship between an inspection and an inspection fee. But I think it feels to me like all of that is kind of very reasonable questions and bubbling up, and something Street Manager probably starts to need to plan for. I feel like Sarah Widdows, the Highway Authority side chair, would certainly agree with that as well. I don't want to put words in anyone's mouths, but Aaron, if you can make a note of that in particular, and Claire in the audience as well, that seems clearly something that's a bit of a hot topic at the moment. So if we can raise that with the SMEs this week and agree that we need to start sort of put that up the roadmap, as it were. Between you and me, guys, we've actually got a couple of gaps in the roadmap for the back half of next year, maybe. Probably the biggest thing on our radar that I haven't actually mentioned is local government reorganisation. So in a world where you might have, not to pick on them, but I think they're one of the first movers in this, you might have a Surrey or someone like that splitting into three, or you might have Medway and Kent coming back together and then possibly splitting again, or all this stuff hasn't quite been decided yet, guys, but I think it's safe to say there is some moves happening. That is going to be a huge piece of work for Street Manager. If you work for one of the new organisations, you're going to expect to walk in on Monday morning and ideally have it work exactly as it did on Friday when you left the previous organisation. Do a search, and all the works that were in Surrey are now part of, I'm going to call it North Surrey for the sake of argument, are going to be there, and as if they always were part of North Surrey. That's what you would expect as a user. If we can deliver that, we'll have to see, but it's going to be as close to that as possible for people, and that is going to be a big bit of work. Don't forget things like inspection sampling as well. How do we handle it where you have no 2-year history of work, but you sort of do, because you do have all those works that happened in the past, so we're starting already to think about that, and it's the biggest thing on the radar. I plan to dip into the what we call the DFT research budget in the department and apply for some funding to do that, as it's like a government thing, do it through the DFT research fund. But yeah, that's going to be taking up quite a lot of the bandwidth, I think, in the next 15 months, basically, ahead of April the 1st, 2027. But that leaves a little bit of room for some other things like the escalation process. So I would say pretty high up the to-do list would be my answer to people like Becky and Colin. There's a question from Richard Kellywhite in the chat here. How are you going to be able to add the differing information from different lane rental schemes to Street Manager and keep it consistent? Well, I think, Richard, that's a really good question. And my answer has to be the NSG. And the NSG has to be the place where that information is. And I know at the moment we have a bit of a situation where individual schemes, and maybe, I'm not an expert, only what I've picked up from hearing people speak, people like Richard Boissier, but they're getting shape files from different orgs and then importing that into their systems. And for me, dare I say it, that's where the NSG is starting to look a little bit outdated, and people are finding solutions outside the NSG to achieve what they need to achieve. So I think there's a spec update. The GeoPlace guys are going to kill me if they're on the call, but feel free to correct me in the chat or the Q&A. I think there's going to be a spec update next year, and I could really do with that spec update delivering the things that people need it to deliver in terms of lane rental. And we've had these conversations with our policy colleagues, with GeoPlace, and for me, Richard and others, it really needs to be the NSG where I get my consistent information. I can't really start dipping into, different types of file formats, or, taking in individual uploads and uploading them. It has to be the NSG. We really need to get the NSG working for us, how we need to work it with lane rental. Easy for me to say. Right, let's see. I was hoping, Kristen, we might have had a Aaron, do you know is it only me that's able to answer the questions? Only people on our side? Are other people in the chat able to comment on other people's questions? Someone's going to start telling me the answer to this, dude.
Yes. I sorry, Aaron, over to you.
No, I think so. Someone could confirm in the chat, but I know me, Paul, and Michael are the organisers or presenters, so we can comment. But I believe other people can. Let's have
Okay. Well,
yep. Kristen's just put a comment in, so yeah, he can.
Oh, right. Okay. Now he shows up. All right. Okay. Right. Here's a fun question for me, and I would like to thank James Kenny for it. Will you be clarifying other footways? Okay. I really don't know if you want me sticking my size 10s into I don't wear size 10 into this one, guys. There's every chance I'm going to leave it more confused than it was in the first place. What I would say is that Sarah Widows has written some really good, clear text on other footways and its use. What do I want to say that's not going to confuse things? I think it's important to say that there's no primary or secondary or regulation or guidance that talks about charging a permit fee for other footways. If your permit scheme does talk about charging for other footways, I'm not sure personally, as a personal view, not the views of the DFT, that is going to stand up in court. You might want to check that with your lawyer. I am not sure, and again, Geoplace might not agree with me, that we're doing ourselves many favours in streetworks by having other footways when you've already got the whole length of a road is Cat 2 or Cat 4 or whatever it might be. To also have other footways, I think it's confusing things. Like in what circumstances in a normal road with carriageway and footway, in what circumstances would you as the HA want the promoter to choose other footways? I'm not sure, because we all know that the footway attracts a permit fee. It attracts Section 74 if you go over the end date of your works. But if you start choosing other footways, it's confusing. It's confusing for the promoter. So I would, number one, as a promoter, always choose the carriageway type if there's one available rather than other footways. But also understand that I don't think, as a personal view, that you're able to charge for a permit fee on an other footways street. And what we'll do is, I think we'll try and get Sarah Widows's guidance that she's written out to people. Maybe we'll do like a newsletter update or something, can include that. My most recent DFT Street Manager newsletter did talk about other footways, but let's get that bit of writing finalised. I think hopefully it's going to go into the code of practice, the next code of practice update. So I hope, James Kenny, I've done you reasonably proud there. But do feel free to comment about other footways in the chat if you like, guys. Right, okay. What else have we got going on? Oh, here's a fun question. Allow this one to skip the queue, guys. with the HAs being broken up, will you have to go back as far as postcode to distinguish areas on Street Manager? I don't think so, Richard. I think from your point of view, it should be fine. You know, like we're going to have it. So on the 31st of March, that street belongs to Surrey. And then on the 1st of April, it belongs to North Surrey. So when you come in on the morning and raise that permit on the 1st of April, it goes to the right place. So the issue should be okay for the promoter. There's a fun situation where, you know, live running and stuff, we need to sort that out. But it's not the promoter I'm worried about. It's the it's how it works for the highway authority, and you know what happens to live works and live FPNs and live defects and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, in terms of new permits, is kind of the least of the worries, really. We had some tough times when Westmoreland in particular split. That was tough. And we managed to get through it with help from their API provider. But yeah, there's some issues there for sure that we need to tackle, guys. Right, how am I getting on with these questions? Right, did that one. Did that one. Did that one. Okay, right, here we go. Can you advise what oh, there's a couple of comments here already. I hope someone in the chat. Okay. Can you advise what info a secondary collaborator is meant to put against the question estimated number of network days saved, as we are struggling to answer? Okay, good question, good question. I suppose the overall answer we want is if you've got 2 5-day jobs on a road closure that would have needed 2 road closures and would have been 5 days each, if you do that in 5 days, you've saved yourself 5 days, haven't you? So the duration of the secondary collaborators permit, yeah, that seems. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Emma. That seems as reasonable as anything I can think of, really. But maybe we need to, Kristen, Claire, maybe clarify that in the next update of the business rules, possibly. Obviously, the great dream of mine and some other people in the industry is to automatically generate that days of network saved calculation for an authority. You know, how many days were saved in a month or something, but it's that's not a straightforward one. That's a bit of a white whale. GeoPlace have examples that cover footways in case studies. Yeah. I mean, footways, footpaths, it's all good, and I'm sure there's best practice and stuff. But I'm just a humble streetworks man. You know, I wouldn't start telling a custodian how to do their job, and I'm sure there's reasons why they do that other footways stuff. But I think to the submission that goes to the into a streetwork system, I'm not sure having it in collaboration with a type 4 or type 1 road or whatever is doing us many favors, and some people have got it on every single street in their authority. Is there any movement being made towards real-time notification within Street Manager? That's a fun question that I could interpret in a number of different ways. Within Street Manager, I'm going to assume that you're talking about getting an email when something happens in Street Manager. Ashley, appreciate you might be shouting at the screen here saying, no, that's not what I mean. I'm thinking of something else. So feel free to elaborate, but that's the question I shall answer. So Thank you for that question. That enables me to talk about the kind of longer term plan for Street Manager. So one thing I didn't mention that we're working on at the moment is work lists. So during this phase, we're doing the groundwork for work lists, and we're going to have, by the end of March, roughly, I think it's fair to say, the product team and Michael are going to be shouting at me in the background for making all these hostages to fortune. But anyway, roughly by the spring, shall we say, we're going to start to see the first work lists come into the service, one for the highway authority and one for the promoter. And those work lists will be like your go-to place for seeing what permits do I need to assess that day, or something like that, you know, things that I need to tick off a work list. So work lists are a building block for dashboards. So we build these work lists and then we turn our attention towards dashboards. And then my plan is, once dashboards are built, that's when we move on to notifications, like email style notifications. So we have people, maybe not too many of them on this webinar actually, but we have lots of people that have less than 100 permits a year, quite a few orgs that fall into that kind of habitat. They're not necessarily on Street Manager every single day. You know, they're not constantly logged in and looking at changes like, you know, some of you guys are, whatever system you use. So those guys are people that would really appreciate an email to say their permit's been refused. Ah, right, okay, I'll go in and make the changes. An email when they get a failed inspection. Ah, right, okay. So that's the dream, is to get the notifications for those people. But if you stop and think about it, if work lists is our business for you know, the next 6 to 9 months, say, and then we start thinking about dashboards, and we're delivering dashboards in 2027. I know it seems years away, but you're probably looking at 2028 before we get into the notifications piece. But that's the way to think of it. Work lists, dashboards, notifications. And then once notifications are done, Street Manager's finished and we can all go home. Right, okay, what have we got here? 2 questions. Is there a chance that we could have more SM memory so that we may run? Oh, Michael, help me, Michael. You're my only hope. He's getting technical on me. Michael, is there a chance that we could have more SM memories so that we may run such as longer dated SU registration reports and the system not be so sticky in the first 2 or 3 hours of the day? Come on, Michael, let's make Steve happy.
Steve, the short answer is it's something I want to work towards. Ultimately, I think the long-term solution for that will be the data platform. We would want to offload reporting to it, whereas the reports you run now are ran against our RDS database, so they are. Instead, we would like to push that to the data platform, and ultimately remove that load against the main Street Manager application. So in short, I suppose the answer is watch this space. I think so. But it's something that definitely I want to achieve in the future. So it is.
Lovely stuff, Michael. Thank you. And then if we look at, that means you can go off camera, by the way, when I say lovely stuff. Thank you. And then if you look at question 2, any chance we could have a dashboard created for start, stops, registrations due, etc.? Yes, that's what the work lists and then dashboards piece is trying to achieve, basically. So yeah, give it a couple of months, and with my memory at my age, I can't quite remember what the first dashboard we're doing, sorry, what the first work list we're doing for promoters is, but if you're very lucky, Claire or Kristen might appear and answer that in the Q&A. But yeah, watch this space, essentially, Steve.
I can jump in on that. It's
Go on, Michael.
Work stops due is the first one.
There you go. There you go.
So
and if you had to, Michael, when would you say that would appear in Street Manager?
So the current plan is towards the end of phase 12, which would be around March. Ultimately, we plan to have work stops due, and from an HA perspective, we plan to have permits about to deed. Those are the first two work lists we plan to deliver at the end of phase 12, and then the others will follow on. So will follow in phase 13. So they will.
This will be on the front page of Highways News by the time we get to the end of the week, Michael. Slow news week. Street Manager promises. No, good work, good work. Okay. Is Street Manager or the DFT going to issue any guides for both highway authorities and undertakers with the fee changes on the 5th of January? Well, the most recent change to Street Manager, we did put in on the FPN screen something around the changes to the fees, and we worded that very carefully, and we agreed it with the SMEs. I think that's a fair point, Becky. Aaron, if you take a note there, there's probably something we can do this week around probably just pulling out that text from Street Manager, putting a bit of a top and tail on it, and maybe we can do one little one-off email, Aaron, to tackle other footways and the changes on the 5th of Jan. Aaron probably rolling his eyes at me now because he had terrible problems, guys, just getting this invite out to this webinar. His whole inbox got shut up, and security, locked his account and whatnot. And yeah, it took him ages just to send the various emails out. And he's in discussions with security about how to email large groups of people. But yes, we will look at that, Becky. Aaron, play your cards right. Maybe I'll send one of the columns on the mailing list as well. Right, okay, let's go into the chat. Right, okay. So there's no more questions at the moment, guys. Maybe you're all webinared out. Let me just have a think for 1 second about the different areas of the service and make sure I've talked about them. Lane rental funding, local government reorganisation. When I say lane rental funding, I mean lane rental functionality funded from the lane rental pot. Work lists. What else did we do? Michael, can you think of anything on the roadmap that I haven't mentioned? I did have the document that we keep the updated roadmap on open, guys, and then I got kicked out through some user issues. So that's not really my fault. I did have that to hand. Hang on, let me just check one other place as well and see if there's any comments. 1 second. Oh, my ears and whiskers. Okay. Aha, right, okay. Let's have a look. Okay. Oh, worth saying. So yeah, just to be clear, phase 12 is up to March 2026. We're doing the work lists and the data archiving you've heard about, but both those things go into phase 13 next year. Can you believe we're on to phase 13, guys? It just sounds absurd to talk about, doesn't it? Lane rental functionality part 1 in this phase Then we move on to part 2. The rebrand that I spoke about to the Gov UK website is current. The plan is to do the non-compliance updates that we've got planned in summer, autumn next year. Also, long-time viewers might remember zombie permits. That's on the blocks at the moment for phase 13. And then what we're looking at for phase 14, and this hasn't been agreed with the governance group yet, so consider this in draft. Handling changes to HA boundaries, hopefully funded by the DFT as discussed. There's the prospect of some external funding potentially to do something around Section 85s, guys. That could be quite exciting, but we've not got into the weeds of that just yet. Users would like us to do, and it's been talked about for a while, Section 58 improvements. So at the moment on the roadmap, we call that Section 58 from a permit. So you can go into a permit and create a Section 58 off the back of it. At the moment, they're 2 totally distinct processes. But there was a great discussion last week with the SMEs around other improvements in that area. At the moment, you can't edit a Section 58 in any way whatsoever. So I think they'd like to do some of that. And there was various other 58 improvements that were put forward last week. So we're starting to look into that. And then one of my dreams, several years in the making, is to have the ability to have a list of activities. So you will, rather than only being able to view them on a map, long overdue this, you'll be able to, particularly, I think of it as a HA, we need to work out what it looks like for a promoter, but go in and see what events are in your area. And then that makes it easier, obviously, to tweak them and change them, and just makes that a much more usable bit of functionality. Because it's not been part of the core Streetworks product, it's never got to the top of the roadmap for improvement. But I think that is possibly time to change now. Even if we just do the basic list page, that's not a huge piece of work. So there you go, guys. I think that has been a fun way to spend 45 minutes. Up to you if you agree with me or not. All that remains to be said is Merry Christmas, take care of yourselves, and see you back here on a webinar in 2025. And I hope you enjoyed that. Take care of yourselves. Merry Christmas. Goodbye.